Crafting the perfect space to be creative and get good work done is a labour of love. My setup has evolved so much over the past few years. I want to share it with you today, so grab yourself a coffee and let's dive right in. The big set piece though on this new desk setup is the Apple Studio display. For some reason it is a pretty controversial display, but for me, going from a pretty old and scratched up LG monitor that definitely isn't made for creative work, this is an absolute revelation. Not only does the design itself bring a real elegance and beauty to the desk setup, actually using the display is amazing too. The fact that its 5K display and pixel density are tailor-made for the Mac OS means that everything is beautifully crisp on this display, much crisper than I've ever seen before. Since I do have this huge window right next to my desk, I decided to go for the nano texture display. On a beautiful day like this, I would have had to shut the curtains to avoid an intense glare on my old monitor, but this nano texture display does an incredible job of diffusing that light and representing the image on the screen without any interference that I can tell. You do have to watch out if you get the nanofiber display, because I can definitely see a little bit of that texture if I look really closely on a white background. There are some frustrations that I have with the Studio display. For example, it's really tight of Apple that they only ship it with a 1 meter Thunderbolt cable. It just pokes out from behind the stand in order to reach where my MacBook is situated, but I definitely don't want to have to pay upwards of £100 for a slightly longer Thunderbolt cable. It also is a shame that you can't connect more than one device to the Studio display at any one time, and that's forced me to make some really intentional decisions about the rest of the setup. Because in my last job I wanted to separate church and state, I had a Mac Mini that I used for all of my full-time employment, and I had my MacBook Pro which I used to drive this YouTube channel and for all of my creative tasks. In an effort to simplify the setup and make sure I'm not constantly switching cables between two devices with the Studio display, I decided to move along the Mac Mini and just focus on the MacBook Pro. And in any case, the MacBook Pro does absolutely everything that I need, and it has that added virtue of being able to go anywhere with me and be used as a laptop. So for me, the 14-inch M2 Pro MacBook was the perfect option. I decided to just go with the base model in the end. So it's the 16GB RAM version, and it's running all of the baseline specs. I know from my Mac Mini just how powerful the M1 base chip is. Getting my hands on a computer that's even more powerful and a lot more portable has been an absolute dream. Looking back, I always used to choose the space grey options when it came to things like phones or laptops, but for some reason I've made the switch over to silver and I have not looked back. I just think this computer is absolutely beautiful. What a sleek aluminium design, and the silver just gives it a really lovely glint when you catch it in good light. It's also a lot lighter than I expected it to be, and it makes that 16-inch MacBook Pro at work feel incredibly heavy when I'm lugging it around. It's going to be a really nice typing experience. The keyboard feels just very light and tactile underneath your fingers. It's got the best trackpad in the game, and I've been really surprised how much I love that Touch ID button. It makes getting into the MacBook so much quicker. And I know you've heard it all before, but that SD card slot and the MagSafe adapter are incredible lifesavers, especially when you've got a toddler running around who will yank things off the table. I have to say that this is one of the best displays I've ever used as well, and it really does make a difference when you're doing things like photo editing or color grading a video. The colors look rich, beautiful, everything looks crisp. Having 120Hz just makes everything feel so snappy across the whole operating system, and no, I really do not notice the notch at all. When it comes to what I'm actually doing on the MacBook Pro, you might think that it's way overkill for me, and I'd probably agree, but I think one of the great things about technology is that it can give you a sense of what's possible even if you're not quite there yet. So I know I've got loads of room to grow in different applications on this machine. This must be the best screen that I've ever had access to, and it really shows the details when you're punching into photographs to do those corrections on little marks that are on the table, or bits of dust that I want to take out of a thumbnail. I can actually see them on this device, and I can see the difference that going through that detailed work is actually making. Being able to make much more subtle shifts in the lighting on Photoshop or Lightroom to really get a better idea about how the colours are going to turn out in a photo. never seeming to stutter or stall even when you've got some big files open. I do edit all of my videos in Final Cut Pro, and as you'd expect, it runs incredibly well on Apple Silicon. One thing I am having to get used to compared to a desktop setup is that I can't expect to have all of my panels open on a 14-inch screen and still see very clearly what I'm editing. It's just a case of switching off the vector scope when you're done with it and packing away those transitions, but it's still an incredible experience working on Final Cut Pro. The fact that I can edit videos without any dongles and just being able to slide in that SD card, it just means that I can get videos made much more quickly and practically. I might even have time to learn something like Premiere Pro at some point. One of the cool new things I've been using a lot on my MacBook Pro is Notion AI. So I'm pretty sure that it's an integration of ChatGPT, but it brings all of that AI power into your Notion workspace. You can ask it to do things like brainstorm ideas or write an entire blog post for you. I decided to ask it if it could create the concept for a YouTube channel about handheld gaming devices, and I was actually astounded at how well it was able to home in on that audience and come up with 10 video ideas that could kick the channel off. This is only in beta at the moment, and you'll have to get onto the waiting list by signing up on the Notion website. But I've really enjoyed making it a part of my productivity workflow, just for idea generation or to try and simplify my language sometimes. It's just an incredible piece of kit to have on this MacBook Pro. And other than that, I haven't really added too much to the computer, to be honest. I'm trying to keep it as focused as possible so that I can concentrate on my creative pursuits, learning new things, and maybe doing a little bit of web browsing when I need to. I do still use my M1 Mac Mini when I'm not as focused on those creative tasks. It's still a great computer and I love having a dedicated desktop setup. But just the fact that I can pick up this laptop, take it to any room in the house and edit some videos, maybe while my son is asleep next to me, I can keep an eye on him, keep an eye on my projects. It's really a big game changer for me that will hopefully drive this channel forward. And before you ask, yes, I did try to do a lot of this on my iPad Pro before picking up a laptop. To see why that never quite worked out, check out this video here. One accessory that really makes the MacBook Pro work as a desktop companion as well though is the Ascrono MacBook Dock. The Ascrono MacBook docking station is an elegant way to stow your MacBook in a desktop setting. But does the care for design that truly makes this feel like part of the Apple family also translate to function? The standout feature of this dock is the ability to slide your MacBook right in and connect instantly to all your external devices. Ascrono actually ships slight variations of the dock depending on the dimensions of your MacBook, and will go all the way back to MacBook Airs or Pros from 2016. Right the way to present computers. Unfortunately, you can only get the dock in space grey at the moment, so if you've got a silver or a space black MacBook, it's not going to pair up exactly, but I do actually quite enjoy the contrast with my silver MacBook. In any case, its sleek design with rounded edges and a high quality alloy material makes it feel right at home on any Apple user's desk. I was surprised to see a dock with such a small footprint on my desk not really move too much as I was actually sliding in the MacBook. I did have a bit of trepidation about scratching up my MacBook, but happy to say there was no reason to worry there. The only thing I did notice at first was that it left a bit of oily residue on my MacBook the first few times that I used it. It didn't leave any lasting mark on my laptop, and it's actually cleared itself up after a few days of use, so it must just be one of those teething issues. When docked, you'll have access to 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports on the back of the station, as well as a MagSafe charging port, which is capable of 140 watt charging. This is great for 2 reasons. One, it's always nice to be able to use the charger that came with your MacBook, and 2, because MagSafe is so easy to remove, if you ever do want to leave the house in a rush, at least you're not going to be wrestling with your dock to get a hold of your charger. Ascrono also sell USB-C hubs like this one they sent me, which has 3 USB-A ports, an HDMI and another USB-C port available. Combined with the SD card reader and USB-C on the other side of the MacBook that now become front-facing I/O, I almost feel like I'm sat down using a studio display when it's actually just my laptop connected to an external monitor. Now personally, I still absolutely love my Mac Mini, and I've got a dedicated desktop setup which is built to get the most out of that device. But I swapped it out for 2 weeks while I was testing this docking station, and I was really surprised at how seamless the laptop felt. Although my monitor definitely isn't up to the specs of the laptop itself, sometimes you do just want a little bit more space, whether you're working on moving files around, using a big spreadsheet, or maybe even getting an early edit down of a Final Cut timeline, but it's the real joy of being able to connect all my different peripherals to the MacBook that makes it really worth it for me. I'm a sucker for a mechanical keyboard, and I've been using the Newfie Air 75 V2. Being able to use that in a wired mode with my laptop means absolutely low latency, and hooking up a Stream Deck for improved productivity is something that I love to do too. There is something really cool about being able to slide your MacBook out of this setup, take it with you anywhere around the house or off on the train, and just continue with the same piece of work without having to worry about transferring files. I mentioned that the MacBook Dock was made by a company called Ascrono, and they've actually just come out with probably the best cable management system I've ever used. Essentially what they've created is a canvas pouch that clamps onto the back of your desk, and because it has this flap and Velcro straps on the inside, you can simply open it whenever you need to add or remove a plug. This is brilliant for the MacBook Pro, for example, because you don't want to tie down your charger into one fixed setup and then not have it with you anytime you leave the house. But with the Ascrono cable care tray, I simply have to lift open the flap, remove the plug, and then I can be on my way. And when I do come back to my desk, everything looks neat and tidy. There's no cables hanging everywhere. You saw how bad I was putting up those frames earlier, but putting together this cable tray was actually really easy. They have a very simple video on their website, as well as some good instructions that come in the box, and you can either set it up with a clamp or by screwing it into your desk. It comes in 4 sizes, and I'm so impressed with how neat and tidy it's made my desk look, and it really just brings that feel of focus to your workspace. We all get excited about getting a brand new gadget, but arguably the most important part of any desk setup is actually your desk chair. I know that as well as anyone, as someone who suffers from chronic back issues, partly caused by working at a desk all the time. I was really excited when Habada reached out and asked whether I'd like to take a look at their E3 ergonomic office chair. This is actually a letter that was sent to my previous employer by my chiropractor with a diagnosis of a chronic mechanical cervical thoracic lumbar facet joint and sacroiliac joint dysfunction with myofascial involvement due to postural issues and office-based jobs. To put that into layman's terms, I basically must have twisted my pelvis at some point in my past, and that basically caused my leg to pull up into my hip and then warp my spine out of shape in order to compensate. And that also caused my left shoulder to kind of arch over towards my right hand side and caused me a lot of severe back issues that have always kind of popped up as I've been, going through life, but added the additional strain of caring for a toddler and then traveling to London very often in my previous job really caused some severe flare-ups that meant I had to get urgent medical attention a year or 2 ago, and I've been going to the chiropractor once a month ever since. Definitely an aggravating factor in this though is that I've never really shelled out the money for a proper office chair. This is actually the 3rd Habada office chair that I've had, but the other 2 were definitely not designed for somebody who sits there and works 40 hours a day on them. In particular, you want to look for a chair that's going to reduce your risk of injury across the 3 most common areas. That is your spine, your shoulders, and your neck. The Habada E3 ergonomic office chair offers support in all of those areas with its T-shaped support system. To look after your lower back, you've got a 3-zone floating wing lumbar support, which is really going to help with my injury, and that helps you to adjust the tightness and also position of that lower back support and keep you sitting upright, but also look after your hips and your pelvis. The back of the chair has this breathable mesh fabric, which is going to come all the way up to the top of your shoulders, which offers you additional support, especially if you want to lean back at any time. And up at the top, you've got the 4D double access neck pillow, which is going to offer you support for the top of your neck. That's going to look after your spine and keep you in a nice aligned posture throughout the day. But also to look after your back, you want to really think about where you're placing your shoulder blades. My chiropractor always says that you should think about putting something in your back pocket and then kind of leaving your shoulders in that position to be in a good resting stance. One cool thing about this chair is how the armrests work, which actually allows you to keep your arms in a good position even when you're typing. It's a 6D mechanical armrest that can move backwards and forwards to get your shoulders and elbows in the correct position, but then it can also swivel inside on an axis to give you better access to something like a keyboard and mouse. And you can even tilt the armrest upwards to support your forearms at quite a decent angle. This is actually perfect if you want to do some handheld gaming on the chair. And yeah, I need to be careful that I don't get caught out doing that too often when I'm trying to get some work done. Perhaps the coolest thing about this chair though is the footrest, which you can swivel out from underneath the chair and then essentially lean back and enjoy a bit of quiet time in those little periods throughout the day. I honestly feel like I could fall asleep in this chair, and I'm not sure that's a good idea, but it's definitely very comfortable indeed. Like any ergonomic chair, it's only going to be as successful as how well you set it up for your body. So you need to do a bit of research online and figure out what is the correct way of sitting. If you do have access to someone like a chiropractor, then they can help you figure that out. But it will take a little bit of tweaking. You do need a little bit of practice to get the adjustments right, but once you've got it all set up, you're going to find this to be an incredibly comfortable chair, and it really is made out of high quality materials as well. The armrests are very wide with this almost like padded like texture, which you can very comfortably rest your arms on. Especially if you've got big arms like me, you're not going to feel cramped on this chair. And yeah, I should also mention that I am a pretty big heavy guy, I guess. I mean, I'm over 100 kilograms, but even for me to sit on this chair, I've definitely got enough room. I'm also 5'11", so 180 centimeters, slightly taller than average, but not by much. And I definitely get the impression that for someone who's a little bit taller than me, they'd still be able to move this backrest higher up, get the neck rest higher up, and have a good experience sitting on this chair. Going from a padded seat to a mesh fabric was something I was interested to experience, and actually it's very comfortable sat on this mesh. I do sometimes feel it tugging back on my pants, which I think is just one of the things that you have to get used to sat on one of these kind of mesh fabric cushions, but I think it's a worthwhile trade-off to not have a kind of stuffy material when it gets too hot outside or in this room, and that breathable fabric is just going to allow you to kind of sit comfortably for longer periods without getting sweaty. The lean back feature is also really fun to use, but definitely a bit scary the first time that you do it. As long as you've built the chair correctly, then you're not going to have any problems. But if you are a bit scared of leaning back or falling off the chair, all you have to do is actually just push in the handle on the right hand side of the chair. But if you do remove it like this and then basically just lean back and hope for the best, it's actually really comfortable and very sturdy. And I have no idea if you can see me or hear me from there, but you know, I'm just going to chill. Now that I work 100% remotely, having this chair is going to be so important to the health of my back going forward. I really like positioning the armrests just at the right height of the table, being able to access the keyboard without having to move my hands, and it really can just help you get into that productive zone. You're not going to get distracted by ailments throughout the day, and it's just an enjoyable experience overall. Whether you want to use this for work, study or gaming, there's so many options there that are going to look after your back and keep you happy and healthy throughout the day. The other big powerhouse of this system is the iPad Pro with that M1 chip. One thing I worry about with the iPad is that because it is this modular computer that can take on any shape of an accessory you put it into, it sometimes feels like it gets stuck in a rut. So what I've done is create a system on my desk that allows me to use the iPad in 3 very different ways. The first way that I use my iPad is, as it is right now, on a VESA mount. It's an incredibly elegant solution that can really elevate the way you use your iPad within the desk setup. This is my first attempt at using a VESA mount, and I found it really easy to set up. I went with this one because I thought it looked quite industrial but still sleek, and that felt like it was part of the Charging Pro aesthetic as well. And the silver finish kind of colour matches with my Mac Mini and my MacBook. The MagFloat mount actually comes with these ridge screws, which makes it incredibly easy to attach to the arm. That was by far the easiest part of the entire entire assembly process. And once it's on there, you'll be able to rotate your iPad in the same way as the MagFloat stand itself, but you have this added dimension of being able to set the iPad stand to exactly the right height for your monitor and for your experience. If you're ever worried about leaving your iPad at a height like this, you really don't have to, because the magnets are so strong. You can even leave your iPhone with a MagSafe case attached to the VESA mount here. Honestly, this is the main way that I use the iPad these days, and it's mainly there as a content consumption device. So that might be listening to music, watching video podcasts while I work. Because I do work remotely and I don't want to be burning everyone's head out on WhatsApp, I do also like to have these study with me streams on the iPad. I can really recommend Heinz, he does amazing ones, and they really give me a sense of community while I'm focusing on my work. Having the screen up on the VESA mount also means it becomes a great sidekick for my MacBook, so I use it for universal control to drag photos across or work on websites that are much better in their app form. I can also fold it away if I want some more focus on a singular task. Sometimes though, you just want to take the iPad down and use it with the pencil, kind of what it was made for. Doing little sketches in Procreate, I'm definitely not the best digital artist, but I find it's really relaxing, meditative. Sometimes if I'm thinking about a difficult problem or a project, I'll just kind of sit there and draw and doodle. And I find that having this really big desk mat is very freeing for the iPad, because I can simply set it down. It's merino wool, it's not going to get scratched, and I can just kind of use the full space of the desk to be creative with my pencil. Another thing I often do is scan PDFs with the iPad's camera and then use the pencil to mark them up. This is really good for language learning. I speak German fluently, but I'm currently trying to get my French up to scratch, and so scanning these language textbooks with the camera, working on them with the pencil, means that I can actually redo sheets. And really, when you are trying to learn a language, actually using your hand to write words can help you memorize them, so definitely something I would recommend. The iPad has also been my big companion for the lengthy commutes from Liverpool to London that I've been making over the past 3 years. Right there in my desk shelf, I also have the Magic Keyboard and a folio case from Native Union that I can take with me depending on what I plan to do on the train. Sometimes in an ideal world, I would be, writing scripts and ideating, things like that on my way to work. In that case, the Magic Keyboard is a good one to take with me. And because going to London and coming back in the same day is really tiring, it's great to watch films on the way back. Sometimes I would just give myself a break and say, you know what, I'm not going to try any work, and just take a folio with me that spares me the keyboard and makes my bag a little bit lighter as well. No desk is finished though without a few really solid accessories. I can't believe this, but I've actually found a printer that I like. After sort of struggling with this HP printer for a couple of years, it could never find Wi-Fi signal and it always got jammed. I decided to just follow Nilay Patel's advice and buy the best Brother laser printer I could find. That is exactly the model that's sat underneath my desk now, and even from the furthest point in the house away from the Wi-Fi router, it picks up the signal perfectly, responds straight away, and although it is only black and white, that's all I need. It prints things very quickly without too much sound, and I am just a real fan of this printer. I definitely recommend it if you're having printer woes like I've had for many years. I'm also lucky enough to test quite a lot of keyboards because brands send me them a lot, but the one that I'm sticking with most of the time is actually the Newfie Air 75 V2. The Newfie Air 75 V2 is a beautiful mechanical keyboard with a very low profile. But can a semi-portable mechanical option really live up to those good looks in terms of performance? Let's find out. Upon unboxing the Air 75, you can immediately tell this is going to be a beautiful piece of technology. So much care has gone into making this a memorable experience, from the design of the boxes themselves, including this nice little keyboard guard that tells you how to pronounce the word Newfie, which honestly I wasn't sure of myself, to the stickers that you get included in the packet, and this lovely keyboard pin that I got for pre-ordering. You know straight away that Newfie are a company who really care about every single detail of their products, and that is exactly what shines through when you actually get to the keyboard and start exploring what a beautiful design this really is. Like other Newfie keyboards, this is a fairly minimalist design, but they're not afraid to show a pop of colour here or there. What's new on this second generation of the Air 75 though is a more transparent base that allows you to see into the keyboard. They've color matched a lot of the internal components with the exterior design too. The Air 75 now has foldable feet rather than just magnetic ones, and you get some nice switches that allow you to really clearly see whether you're in wireless mode, 2.4 GHz, or using wireless Bluetooth. NuFi have introduced several of their own proprietary switches for this keyboard, but they were all sold out when I was pre-ordering my version, so I ended up going with a brown switch. I'm used to using cherry blue switches myself, but I thought this might actually be a keyboard I can take out into public spaces, so I wanted something that was a little bit more subtle. Let's take a listen and let me know in the comments if you think I made the right choice. So as you can see, this isn't going to be a super thocky keyboard with that fairly slim profile, but it does give you a really nice audible feedback, and it feels really nice to type on as well. The fact that it is a lower profile means you have less action between your fingers and the base, and that means that it's not going to be as tiring to type on as some other keyboards. Honestly, I'm not the most dexterous typist, but having spent a little bit of time with this keyboard, I've now adjusted completely and feel that it's an incredibly comfortable way to get through long periods of typing. And it's accurate too, thanks to the new connectivity that's been brought about by this second generation. That's because the V2 has 1000 Hz polling rates compared to the 500 of the previous model. Combined with some upgrades to the chip architecture, this makes it very low latency. Out of the box, the key bindings are compatible with iOS devices as well, so if you want to click on Spotlight or Dictation, then this is all pre-programmed into the keyboard, and I find that really convenient. That's not to say it's without its problems, because I've definitely had some issues when connecting through Bluetooth, where the top two rows of the keyboard just seem to stop working at all. It seems like my Mac Mini is briefly losing connectivity and then forgetting which kind of keyboard it's connected to. But at least if you want to go with a wide option anyway, the cable you receive with this keyboard is color matched to perfection and looks brilliant as part of the same design. So let's talk accessories, because one of the other cool things about NuFi is that there's loads of different add-ons that you can buy for these keyboards. My favourite is this series of desk mats that NuFi have created with contour, inspired by some of the great mountains of this world. And I actually picked up the Mont Blanc model long before I even had a NuFi keyboard, which was part of what gave me the confidence to actually go out and buy one in the first place. It's almost a geological surveillance map of Mont Blanc, and it even details how high its peaks are, as well as its exact location on the Earth. I love the way it catches the light differently throughout the day, and it feels great underneath your arms too. Of course, you can support your wrists a little further by picking up the wrist rest. Honestly, I don't think this is essential for anybody, and it's actually really comfortable to type on the keyboard without using a wrist rest. But I do think this is a really sleek object in itself, and I love how it matches up with the new transparent base. However, the accessory that has intrigued me the most has absolutely been this folio case. The case itself is a really clever design. It wraps around the keyboard and almost looks like a purse. You unfold it and find a magnetic base that snaps onto the bottom of the keyboard, and then you fold back the other side of the case to provide a rest point for your iPad. Honestly, this isn't the sturdiest way of securing your iPad. You have to get the angle just right and then be hopeful that nobody brushes past your table, because you will send your iPad flying. However, if you just want one keyboard for your desktop computer at home and your iPad on the go, you don't want to have to spend £300 for a Magic Keyboard, then this is actually a really nice option. Remember that plastic guard from the unboxing? You can definitely put that guard over the keyboard now, and then you've got yourself a nice hard shell inside the folio case. It really is a lovely case and a well-presented way of making this keyboard feel a little bit more portable. But if you also want to take a trackpad or a mouse with you, then you're just going to be adding accessories that need to fit into your bag somehow. New fight, if you're watching, why don't you think about stitching on a little sleeve where I could stow my trackpad whenever I want to take this on the go? Because V2 of the Air 75 is just a keyboard that I want to keep typing on wherever I am. Yes, it has that beautiful aesthetic, but it also backs it up with some solid connectivity and performance. If you're anything like me, you've spent years looking for that one mouse that you love using for absolutely everything. Well, the Logitech MX Master 3S might just be that mouse. Looking back, I should have picked up an MX Master years ago, but £120 for a mouse always felt a little bit hard to justify. That is until I actually started using this one, and now I see just how important it is to get a mouse that really brings joy and lifts your mood when you're doing any kind of work. Now, if you are going to spend that much money on a mouse, then you better hope that it has some killer features and a premium design, and the MX Master 3S really lives up to both of those counts. Although it's made out of plastic, the 3S feels really nice in the hand. The thumb rest adds comfort and control, while these ridges give the mouse a nice grip. The fact that you can charge the mouse while working is such a relief too, but you won't really have to worry about running out of charge too often, because Logitech claims that this thing can last up to 70 days of use. There aren't too many differences between this mouse and its predecessor, the MX Master 3, and I'll be honest, I mainly got it because I like the pale grey version. I thought it would look a little bit more harmonious with the rest of my desk setup. Other than that, it does have an 8000 DPI compared to a 4000 DPI on the 3. That does make this mouse a lot more responsive, but for productivity tasks, you're probably not going to notice it. One thing you will notice is just how quiet the click is on this mouse. Logitech claim that the 3S is 90% quieter than the 3, and it is pretty silent. As someone who does enjoy the auditory feedback of my keyboard, I wasn't expect to appreciate this feature, but using it in real life, so being able to discreetly click the mouse whenever I'm delivering a presentation, or just need to look at some reference material in the middle of a big call, is actually a major plus for me. Where this mouse really comes into its own though is for scrolling, and there are two scrolling features that I absolutely love. First up is what I would call an infinity scroll along the vertical axis. Spin the wheel one time and it will keep scrolling until you stop. If you need a little bit more control, you can always switch out of this mode, but I stay in there all the time. I'm often working on lengthy Excel sheets or big PDFs that I have to cycle through, and this mouse is really making life a lot easier for me. Of course, you also have horizontal scroll, and this is a big reason that a lot of video editors pick up the MX Master 3 as well. But again, it's also brilliant for apps like Excel, Google Sheets, or even Notion, where you have to navigate left and right across big tables. It's not quite as intuitive as the horizontal swipe gesture on a Magic Mouse, but I am starting to find that muscle memory kicking in and making the 3S really practical in my workflow. Device switching is something else that I really appreciate about this mouse, especially because Logitech is quite slow to optimize its software for new Apple features, and Universal Control still has some issues. Luckily, it can pair with up to 3 devices at any one time, and you just have to flip the mouse over and press one button to cycle through all of them, so it's really practical. Back to the top of the mouse, and there are 7 buttons in total that you can customize to your heart's content. The MX Master series is compatible with Logitech's Options Plus app that allows you to set different commands for each button on the mouse. You can even set up different modes with various calibrations, and it can automatically switch between those depending on the app that you're using. I have 2 setups at the moment, one daily driver and one for Final Cut Pro. In terms of my productivity workflow, I have quick screenshot button when I press down on the scroll wheel, and then I've got the side buttons programmed for copy and paste values, which again is really handy when working in Excel. On the thumbpad, I have mission control, which is my main way of switching between windows on my Mac. And I've left the other ones as pretty standard, left, right click, switch between the scroll modes, because realistically, they're the essentials. This app is separate to Logitech's G Hub, which works alongside their gaming mice, so it's a bit annoying that I have to have 2 different Logitech apps on my computer for that, but I can live with it. The real question is whether the MX Master 3S is really worth £120. I'd say yes, as long as you're not upgrading from the MX Master 3, and actually if you look on Amazon you can get really good deals on that now that the 3S has been released. The way I see it, you're spending 8 hours a day using your mouse, and in a way, along with your keyboard, it's the most tactile way that you interact with your computer. So you may as well have an enjoyable experience while you're doing that that's going to keep you in a good mood and lift your spirits throughout the day. This is the best mouse that I've ever used, and for that reason it has to go down as a piece of intentional tech. Building Building a professional sounding microphone setup from your bedroom can feel like a daunting task. It can also take up a lot of space on your desk. So to solve those two problems, Elgato have come up with a raft of recent products aimed at making you sound great from your bedroom, whether you're working from home or creating content. They've sent a lot of those products over to me for review today, so let's dive straight into the microphone. For reference, I record these videos on a Rode shotgun mic, which is plugged directly into my camera, and that's about 12 inches away from my mouth. So this is what the Elgato Wave XD sounds like, and one of the misconceptions about dynamic mics like this is that they're automatically going to sound better than a compressor mic like the Elgato Wave 3, but that's not really the case. Actually, they're just built for different purposes. And one thing you'll notice about this microphone is that it's only really picking up from the very top of the microphone here. And that means that it's going to do really well at noise reduction and cutting out that environmental influences on my microphone. If you see any trains going past here, then maybe you'll be able to see how that works in practice. But the Wave 3, for example, is going to be picking up from multiple points around the microphone. And that means it will be able to give a slightly broader spectrum in terms of my voice, but it's going to have a lot more noise in the background, and you will suffer from echo quite a lot in terms of using those condenser mics. With a dynamic mic like this one, it's going to have that podcast radio style feel to it, which is definitely something which fits certain types of content better than others. One really cool thing is that it's got a built-in pop filter, so you could be the judge of how well it's actually working through this vocal track, but I really like it. And if you do want to play around with the sound profile of this microphone, then you can add in plugins from the Elgato marketplace. You can get some free ones like a built-in compressor, a noise reduction and a EQ balancer. And there is also a paid reverb effect, which is about £11 in the UK. I think that's more aimed at musicians, people like that, rather than someone who just wants to use a microphone for work or streaming. But the idea is that other companies could come along and create plugins which really enhance your microphone experience. There are a lot of free plugins built in if you're using an Apple device, so that's also really cool to see. And the Wavelink software, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but I would really advise you to kind of step into it, because that's kind of the point of using a microphone like this and really tweaking it to exactly how you want to use it. The vast majority of us recording from home don't have perfectly soundproofed environments, so reducing the amount of room noise that gets picked up by your microphone is going to be a big plus. Arguably, the best thing you can do to improve your audio quality though is to simply get the microphone as close as possible to the audio source. This is the Elgato Wave Mic Arm Pro, and it can hold up to 3 kilograms, so let's not just limit this to microphones. You could also put a camera and even an Elgato Pronto on here. Now this is a very expensive option. It comes in around £179 or dollars if you want to pay that amount, but what you are getting is a very premium experience. Because the arm is supported by gas spring suspension, you can maneuver it into exactly the right position without having to fiddle about with knobs, and it's also deadly silent, so it's not going to interrupt the audio track if you just need to readjust the position of your microphone. Your setup is going to look really clean when you're using this mic arm. It comes with 2 magnetic plates which snap into position and act as cable management. And it comes with these magnetic joint plates which Elgato will allow you to customize in the future, which can just add that nice pop of personalization to your setup. As someone who's been contending with a microphone placed on my desk for a long time, I've often found that it got in the way of my keyboard when I was in meetings and never could really get it at the right height for my voice. So having my mic on an arm like this that can easily stow away when I'm not using it and still won't even get in the way if I want to type during a meeting, that's pretty cool to me. Another device that's going to save you a lot of desk space is the XLR dock, which you can now plug into the back of the Stream Deck Plus. If you're recording with a dynamic mic, you will need some kind of audio mixer because it's going to be picking up in analog and you need something that's going to convert that signal to a digital format. The XLR dock is going to handle all of that for you. It's even got a headphone jack so you can monitor the audio as you're recording. And the Stream Deck is going to give you all of the controls to mix and tweak that audio in real time. If you're new to the Stream Deck, it's essentially a programmable macro pad that can carry out lots of different functions on your computer. You have 8 main face buttons that you can program as you like, as well as a swipeable touchscreen which will allow you to switch between profiles. I generally have different ones for my audio mixing, my productivity setup across Google Docs and Google Sheets, and different time zones so I can keep track of colleagues who are working in different parts of the world. But the real game changer for people who are operating their audio through the Stream Deck Plus is those 4 knob controls at the bottom. You can use them to dial up the volume or tweak the lighting in your room, and you can also press down on them to reveal an additional function, like for example, going onto mute. This Stream Deck also sits quite a bit taller than some of the other models, which can actually be a lot more comfortable to use compared to something like the Stream Deck Neo. But the fact that Elgato have combined an audio mixer with the Stream Deck in this way is really impressive to me, and it definitely just brings this whole setup to life. It's worth saying that you definitely don't need to use an Elgato microphone for all of this to work. At £99 or dollars, I do think that the microphone itself comes in at a good price point, and you can always upgrade it to something much more professional if you ever need to in the future. £179 or dollars for a mic arm is pretty expensive. You also have an XLR cable to worry about, and you need to connect it to a mixer and maybe even the Stream Deck Plus. So when you actually bundle all of this together, it does get pretty expensive. But if you do consider this a plug and play package, which is really easy to set up and get moving with a professional sounding audio setup, then I actually think that's pretty cool. And one thing to note is that Elgato products often go on sale around times like Black Friday. So if you just have a bit of patience and wait for those price drops, then you can definitely pick them up at a cheaper price than that. I would also say that the audio quality you're going to get out of the mic is not necessarily any better than something like the Elgato Wave 3, which you can just pick up as a standalone microphone and not have to worry about any of the rest. For the vast majority of people, the Elgato Wave 3 or the Elgato Wave Neo are going to be much better options, and I actually reviewed those here, so feel free to check that video out. But thanks so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in a bit.